I'm now going to hand over everything to the Public Protector. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Musana. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for coming, and apology for starting late, as we apologize. Most importantly, I would like to thank the team from Public Protector South Africa who have helped me to put on this very important work today. We've been busy since the past 8 months, contrary to popular belief that it has been a period where we are not issuing any reports. While on the road as part of the stakeholder engagement, which I've started in February and it ended in May, we've issued 11 investigation reports, and we've also managed to finalize 10,787 investigations out of the 16,397 service and conduct failure matters. So on service delivery failure, I'm certain that reports that we've released will make a significant difference in the lives of the members of the public. Regarding conduct failure, which is essentially matters of good governance or corruption-related matters, it is my hope that those that have been caught on the wrong side of the law will have to be dealt with, and the very same wrong which has been committed will be dealt with and will never be repeated. Most importantly, I trust that our modest contribution in this regard will bring us a step closer to playing our part in the mandate we share with fellow Chapter 9 institutions to strengthen constitutional democracy. The outcomes of the three reports out of the 11 I'm referring to have already been communicated to the media and members of the public in my 100 days in office. Today I'm releasing 4 reports, taking the total of the reports we've released in the past 8 months to 15. I must add that all these reports result from the investigations that were pending at the time of my assumption of duty. In the circumstances, it was my duty as the incumbent public protector to pick up where my predecessor left off. Before I reveal my findings on the 4 new reports, let me say that the stakeholder engagement which we've just concluded last month was worth every cent that we've spent, which is around 1.5 million, which we've budgeted for. You would know that I visited 18 towns across the country between February and May, and we've received more than 1,000 service delivery and conduct failure complaints. The towns which I've visited included Ratanda, Tohando, Emelo, Tabanchuma, Diboho, Kilanyoni, Masiphumelele, Mkandule, and Richi. These included cases such as the plight of community of Masiphumelele in Cape Town, where people live in squalor right on the banks of the stinking drainage canal that may only pose a health hazard to residents, and also danger to the children. Further, there are cases which I've received from Mpumalanga relating to farm evictions and a very oppressive way the farm dwellers are being treated in that part of the province. There are also cases I've picked up in the Free State and the Northwest where there are a lot of disagreements between the chiefs and the municipalities, and we will be having a systemic investigations as far as those are concerned. The 11 reports which were issued includes, among others, reports we've issued against Transnet about some employees which were dismissed there against the Compensation Fund, against Eastern Cape Department of Social Development, Tshwane South College, Ngakamudiri Mulima District Municipality, Geoscience, and Limpopo MEC Mapula Mugaba Pukwane Meta. And then the reports I'll be issuing today relate to the following departments: the Department of Arts and Culture versus the South African Roadies Association, KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Government and SAPS and others, we call it Levellands Matter. The Northwest Provincial Government matter where it relates to Baboba Mukhale, relating to the expenditures which were done there, or irregular expenditures or monies wasted. Then the last one is the South African government and the one we normally call the CIEX report. On the SARA matter, I've investigated the alleged failure or undue delay by the Department of Arts and Culture to implement a settlement agreement. The complaint was lodged with the Child Protector by South African Roadies Association following the lack of implementation by Departments of Arts and Culture of the settlement agreement signed on the 1st of April 2014. The complainant is SARA, which is the South African Roadies Association, and represented by the President, Mr. Freddie Nyatela. In the main, the complainant was that the Department of Arts and Culture failed or unduly delayed to implement the settlement agreement, which was signed, and then having considered the evidence uncovered during the investigation against the relevant regulatory framework, the Child Protector makes the following findings. In fact, the issues which we've determined there was the first one on the delay to implement the settlement agreement, that the allegation was substantiated and the Department of Arts and Culture failed to implement the settlement agreement, and further the department failed to implement parts dealing with the submission of the detailed implementation plan, which was relating to the renovations of the SARA house, and that renovation was supposed to be done through IDT. And the department's failure in this regard constitutes improper conduct and maladministration as contemplated in section 182(1)(a) of the Constitution, read with section 6(4)(a) 5 of the Child Protector Act. On the finding that Department of Arts and Culture improperly failed to fund or render financial assistance to SARA, the finding is substantiated, and indications are that the Department of Arts and Culture had an obligation to fulfill and to support SARA on its international interactions over a period of 3 years. They have done that, and on this particular matter, in fact, on this matter of supporting SARA or strengthening SARA for its international relations, this one was not substantiated because there's proof that they did support SARA in this instance. But then on funding SARA on its operational and administrative costs, that one is substantiated. The department, according to the settlement agreement, was supposed to assist SARA with its operational and administrative costs. And the department has acknowledged that there has been some instances in the approach with regard to funding other institutions, especially for operational costs, because they only funded SARA on administrative costs. The Child Protector accordingly finds that there is no proper alignment on this funding model, and that the exercise of such discretion has been unfairly exercised in the case of SARA. And this conduct constitutes maladministration. On the issue whether the department unduly funded operational and administrative costs of 3 orchestras and unfairly discriminated against SARA, this is substantiated because the department also confirmed that they are only funding the orchestras for operational and administrative costs. whether the department improperly failed to acknowledge receipt and correspondence from SARA on the matter of not responding to their complaints or to their inquiries. This is not substantiated because there's proof that the department has been engaging SARA on the particular matter. Therefore, the following remedial actions have been, will be communicated to the department as far as the renovations of the SARA house. In the settlement agreement, the department agreed to renovate the SARA house, and they agreed to do that through IDT, but then later they raised challenges to say that they will no longer be using or giving the money to IDT to assist SARA. They would want to directly deposit the money into the SARA's bank account for SARA to do those renovations, which the Public Protector feels it's not proper to give such exorbitant amount to a private company like SARA to do its own renovations. Therefore, the Public Protector finds that the department should be transferring the money to the South African it will not be transferred directly to SARA, but then it will be sent to the Development Bank of South Africa, where they will be facilitating this project on behalf of SARA, and that must be done within 30 days after this report has been issued, and that the department should be paying the Development Bank of South Africa an amount of 10% of the grant, so that they can conduct this project for management fees and to manage the renovations of SARA House. Another finding is that the Minister of Arts and Culture should be amending the white paper on arts, culture and heritage within 3 months of this report to ensure that SARA is not unfairly discriminated against when it comes to the allocation of operational and administrative costs. And this will benefit any other organization instead of only benefiting the orchestras. The next report relates, we call it Dlebalance. It relates to the killings which happened in Dlebalance Hostel in Umlazi outside Durban in KwaZulu-Natal. This matter as well, in fact all the matters I'll be releasing today dates back to around 2012, 2013 and 2014. The aim was to ensure accountability by relevant state organs on their roles in redressing the situation at the hostel. The intervention followed a complaint lodged by Professor McCord Mason, the President of Commonwealth Legal Education Association, in which he complained about the frequent and unabated killings that were taking place at the Dlebalance Hostel in Umlazi, in Durban, and the unlawful eviction and displacement of hundreds of hostel residents that were allocated rooms. He stated that the murders and unlawful evictions were a flagrant violation of the right to life, the right to personal security, and the right to access to housing as enshrined in the Constitution. Having considered the evidence uncovered during the course of the intervention against the relevant regulatory framework, the Public Protector had the following findings. Whether eThekwini municipality administered the Dlebalance Hostel in accordance with the law and the applicable policies and prescripts. If not, whether such failure amounted to maladministration. The finding is that eThekwini failed to promote a safe and healthy environment within the Dlebalance hostels as required by Section 152(1)(d) of the Constitution and envisioned in its own hostel policy approved in 1998. eThekwini municipality failed to give members of the local community equitable access to the municipal services to which they were entitled as envisaged in Section 42F of the Local Government Municipal Systems Act. And eThekwini municipality, as outlined above, failed to conduct themselves properly, and therefore that amounts to maladministration. Whether the handling of the security situation at the Cleveland's Hostel by the security cluster accorded with the duties imposed on it by the Constitution and the law, if not, whether such amounted to maladministration. This relates to the South African Police Services. They failed to live up to the objective to prevent, combat and investigate crime, to maintain public order, and to protect and secure the residents of Cleveland's Hostel and their property, and to uphold and enforce the law as required by Section 205 of the Constitution. Therefore, their conduct is also improper and amounts to maladministration. On the question whether the Department of Social Development fulfill its mandate in relation to the victims and survivors of Cleveland's hostile violence, if not, whether such failure amounted to maladministration, the finding is that indeed the department failed to fulfill its responsibility to the victims of Cleveland's hostel, as required in terms of Section 27(1)(c) of the Constitution, and is contrary to its policy on social relief of distress. The other report relates to Bophirima. I investigated the allegations of improper prejudice suffered by the Bophirima community as a result of maladministration by the former Bophirima administration and the Department of Local Government and Traditional Affairs in the management of the so-called Bophirima D account. The complaint was lodged on 26 March 2012 by Freddie Mokhale and Ms. Itumeleng Muyarane, who are members of the Royal Six, and Mr. A. Fatane, who is a member of the community. In the main, the complainants allege that the former Bophirima administration and the then Northwest Department of Local Government and Traditional Affairs improperly caused Bophirima community to suffer prejudice as a result of maladministration in the management of Bophirima D account. I've made the following findings as far as that matter is concerned. That the HOD of the Department of Local Government and Traditional Affairs in the Northwest and Bapo administration failed in the management of Bophirima D account, and the process of the procurement in the construction of the palace was done without going out on tender or calling for quotations. Accordingly, it was irregular to have proceeded with the construction without going on tender, because the Bapo administration would have received and considered other competitive bidders. The total construction work of the palace complex amounted to 115 million, which was well above way above the budgeted amount of 29 million. There was gross misuse of funds by the department to have exceeded the budget of approximately 85 million, and no reasons were advanced for such a huge increase. There were no municipal improved building plans at the commencement of the construction of the palace. Despite the negative report or remedial work to be done on the palace, no action was taken against the main contractor, Ndlovuko Civil Works. It was improper for the department to have allowed the construction of the palace without having obtained the approvals. The administrators were expected to perform their functions and responsibility in terms of statutory law and the Constitution, and they failed to do that. Further, the traditional councils are expected to perform their functions in good faith, diligently, efficiently, honestly, and in a transparent manner. They also failed to do that. The HOD should have ensured that Bapo administration have developed a sound policy or framework governing the awarding of bursaries and a detailed register of beneficiaries, which could not also be found. It's If such controls and systems were in place, the issue relating to overspending of 6 million should have been avoided. Some of the administrators, they were paid exorbitant amounts by BAPO administration and the department, and such payments should have been investigated further to determine whether such payments were justified. It was, in some instances, Mr. Mulondo to have approved his own invoice amounting to 719,000. Such payments should have been done by the next senior person within the department and not the administrator himself. There was payment of allowances to the amount of 12 million where there is no policy governing payments of allowances. Mr. Mabale was paid an allowance of 297,000 for participating in the land claim committee, and there was no explanation why such huge amounts were paid to this particular person. The investigation into the poverty alleviation program revealed that the financial controls around this project were appalling because there were allegations that staff was carrying hard cash in ranges of millions and in their cars to pay whoever was dealing with this particular project. There was also lack of controls in monitoring the budget and expenditure of around 38 million between 2011 and 2012 financial year during one Mr. Lerefulo's tenure, who was one of the administrators. The security costs increased sharply in 2011-12 to around 3.2 million and as high as 8.9 million in 2013-2014, and there's no justification for such increase. And the department failed to safeguard the funds in the Bamukhale, and for that reason certain amounts cannot be accounted for, as in some instances there's over expenditure as well as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The department failed to submit the BAPO administration books and accounts for auditing by the Auditor General, who would have provided opinions and guidelines on how this account should be managed. The conduct of the department and Bapoba Mukhale administration constitute maladministration in terms of Section 64A of the Protector Adv and improper conduct is envisaged in Section 182 of the Constitution. The allegation that failure by the department and BAPO to properly manage the D account of BAPO for the benefit of the community is also substantiated. As a result of the failure by the department to properly manage the D account, millions of rents cannot be accounted for. Further, the conduct of the department deprived the community of financial resources which would have been used for the community's benefit with regards to additional decent housing, proper healthcare facilities, food, water, and social security, and poverty alleviation. As a result of poor workmanship and vandalism of multi-purpose centers and other community halls is unable to, and they are not being used for any, they can't be used for any recreational purposes because the department and BAPO failed to maintain those buildings. Therefore, the findings are as follows, or remedial actions. The Premier of the Northwest to approach the SIU with a view in terms of Section 2 of the Special Investigating Unit and Special Tribunals Act 74 of 1996 to initiate a process to ascertain the irregular amounts paid as listed hereunder, which is a regular payment of an amount of 78 million to Nkluvuko or Civil Works for the construction of the palace, an amount of 21 million paid to Nzalama Interiors for the construction of the palace, an amount of 8 million paid to Project Consult on the construction. So all this relates to the construction of the palace. The payment of an amount above 20 million paid to Nkambule and Associates on the construction of the trunk roads, in Wonderkop and Greater Bapong areas. Payment of an amount of 8 million and 4 million respectively to Mr. Dlamini, Abel Dlamini and Junius Muloto respectively during their tenure as administrators, and an additional amount of 719,000 to Mr. Muloto. Payment of an amount of 3.7 million to Madisa and Associates who were contracted to provide marketing and communication services. Payment of an amount of 5.1 million to Busisiwe Business Consulting, and for coming up with a review of activities in the mining. They were paid as consulted, but then there were no reports coming out of that. Payment of an amount of 36 million to Matlape Construction, where they were running a project, but there are no details because there's payments which were given to those companies, but there's no work which was done as far as that is concerned. Payment to DREG Accounting for the implementation of the enterprise resource planning to an amount of 4 million. Payment of an amount of 8 million to Taba Consulting, the project managers of the construction of the multipurpose center for poor workmanship. Payment of 13 million to Queen's Building for the construction of another multipurpose center. Payment of 5 million to Taba Consulting Engineers. It still relates to multipurpose center. And payment of 7.1 from Katelopili Consulting Engineers, still relates to one community center, Sekwailani Community Center. And the Premier further to approach the SIU to conduct the unlawful appropriation and expenditure of public money by these administrators and the directors of companies, and where possible to recover all those costs. And then there are findings as well in fact, the SIU to further investigate the establishment of the Bamukhale investment company, its operations and its spending. And then the Director General of the province must ensure that Babo administration must, within 60 days from issuing of this report, take necessary processes to maintain and renovate the multipurpose center, the cemeteries, and all the halls which they were supposed to have taken care of. The Director General must further conduct an investigation to establish whether the conduct of one Mr. Lerefolo, the then administrator, who is still employed within the Northwest Provincial Department of Qatar, whether they have contravened the Public Service Act and the regulations. And the Director General must refer aspects of legal costs incurred by Babo administration to the Law Society to assess and verify the fairness of the legal costs incurred, because there are exorbitant amounts paid in that particular aspect. And then the Public Protector is referring the matter to the Auditor General in terms of Section 64C2 to audit the D account of Baboba Mohale administration. And further, the Public Protector is referring this report to the National Prosecuting Authority and DPCI to identify the matters where it appears that crime has been committed. The final report relates to an investigation on the utilization of the South African government monies to pay a CIEX company, a report which was produced and it was never implemented by the South African government. I investigated the allegations here we refer to this investigation as CIEX, a report which was compiled by Mr. Michael Otley, who was contracted by the South African government to assist in investigating and recovering misappropriated public funds and assets allegedly committed during the apartheid regime. The complainant was Advocate Paul Hoffman, who alleged that a memorandum of agreement was signed between Bophirima on behalf of the Government of the Republic of South Africa and Mr. Michael Otley on behalf of CIEX in October 1997, allowing CIEX to investigate and recover public funds on behalf of the government. He also alleged that what is of concern is part of the CIEX report that deals with the lifeboat allegedly afforded by way of an illegal gift by the South African Reserve Bank to Bancorp Limited, now Absa Bank, during the apartheid regime. The complainant alleges that the government of the Republic of South Africa and the South African Reserve Bank failed to implement the CIEX report and to recover misappropriated money from Bancorp Limited without providing any reasons to that effect. Having considered the evidence uncovered during the investigation against the relevant regulatory framework, the Public Protector makes the following findings. Whether the South African government improperly failed to implement the CIEX report dealing with alleged stolen state funds after commissioning and duly paying the same. The allegation whether the South African government improperly failed to implement the report is substantiated. CIEX was paid £600,000 British pounds for services which were never used by the South African government. No evidence could be found that any action was taken, specifically in pursuit of the CIEX report. Failure by the South African government was inconsistent with the duties imposed by Section 195 of the Constitution, requiring a high standard of professional ethics. The failure was also inconsistent with Section 231 of the Constitution that requires that all constitutional obligations must be performed diligently without delay. The failure of the South African government constitute improper conduct as envisaged in Section 182(1) of the Constitution and maladministration as envisaged in Section 6 of the Public Protector Act. Whether the South African government and the South African Reserve Bank improperly failed to recover from Bancorp stroke Absa Bank an amount of 3.2 billion cited in the CIEX report, the allegation is substantiated. The correct amount of the illegal gift granted to Bancorp or Absa is in an amount of 1.125 billion. Two investigations into the matter established that the financial aid given to Bancorp Absa was irregular. The South African Reserve Bank, in granting the financial aid, failed to comply with Section 10(1)(f) and S of the South African Reserve Bank Act 90 of 1989. The Minister of Finance had a duty as obliged by Section 37 of the South African Reserve Bank Act of 1989 to ensure compliance to the Act by the South African Reserve Bank. The Ministry failed to comply with this obligation. In the circumstances, the conduct of the South African government and the South African Reserve Bank constitute improper conduct as envisaged in Section 182(1) of the Constitution. Whether the South African public was prejudiced by the conduct of the government of South Africa and the South African Reserve Bank, if so, what would it take to ensure justice? The allegations whether the South African public was prejudiced by the government and Reserve Bank is substantiated. The South African government wasted an amount of £600,000 British pounds on services which were never used. The amount given to Bancorp stroke Absa Bank belonged to the people of South Africa. Failure to recover the gift resulted in prejudice to the people of South Africa, as the public funds could have benefited the broader society instead of a handful shareholders of Bancorp and Absa. The conduct of the South African government and the South African Reserve Bank goes against the ethos laid in the preamble of the Constitution and Section 195 of the Constitution in respect of redressing social injustices and promoting efficiency. The conduct further is contrary to Batupili principles that requires redress, and the view held in Kumalo case requires a public functionary to arrest reported irregularities. The conduct of the South African government and the Reserve Bank constitute improper conduct as envisaged in the Constitution and the Public Protector Act. The appropriate remedial action that the Public Protector is taking in terms of Section 182, 1C of the Constitution is the following. The Special Investigating Unit, to the Special Investigating Unit, the Public Protector is referring this matter in terms of Section 64C2 of the Public Protector Act to reopen and amend Proclamation R47 of 1998, published in the Government Gazette in 1998, in order to recover misappropriated public funds unlawfully given to ABSA in the amount of 1.125 billion. And number 2, to reopen and amend Proclamation R47 of 1998, which was published in the Government Gazette dated 7 May 1998, in order to investigate alleged misappropriated public funds given to various other institutions which are mentioned in the CIEX report. The South African Reserve Bank must cooperate fully with the Special Investigating Unit and also assist the Special Investigating Unit in the recovery of the misappropriated public funds mentioned in AA and BB above. To the Portfolio Committee of Justice and Correctional Services, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services must initiate a process that will result in the amendment of Section 224 of the Constitution in pursuit of improving socio-economic conditions of the citizens of the Republic by introducing a motion in terms of Section 73(2) of the Constitution in the National Assembly. This relates to the amendment of the Constitution and to read as follows. The primary object of the South African Reserve Bank is to promote balanced and sustainable economic growth in the Republic while ensuring that socio-economic well-being of the citizens are protected. The South African Reserve Bank, which is number 2, in pursuit of its primary object, must perform its functions independently without fear, favor, or prejudice, while ensuring that there must be regular consultation between the bank and Parliament to achieve meaningful socio-economic transformation. These reports will be uploaded on the Public Protector website by close of business today after all the affected parties have been favored with the copies. Thank you.
Thank you, Public Protector. I am now going to take questions. In the form of questions, I'm going to take it in 3 batches. I would like colleagues to be able to identify their names, the organization they're coming from, and then we'll take it from there. I noted 3 hands on my left, starting with Kevin Moore, TV.
Thank you very much, Advocate Mkhwebane. Karen Moon from ETV. My first question is in relation to the CIEX report. There was a number of reports at the time when the draft report was leaked that the recommendations made by your predecessor in regards to recovery of the money were not that there should be a recovery of the money. You seem to have taken a fundamentally quite different stance. If that is the case, can you explain the thought process behind that? And then in terms of this potential amendment to the Constitution, you know, what inspired that? Was that part of the relief that was sought? Because obviously within the current environment in which we find ourselves, there is such a manifestly profound political tension between financial institutions over these allegations of state capture and you know, this white monopoly capital discourse. This will be perceived as a politically loaded recommendation. Secondly, if you could just please enlighten us as to your office's approach to the President's State of Capture review. You said in February, on the 2nd of February, that you were taking legal advice on whether you would abide, support, or oppose the relief sought by the President. Can you give us any insight into, you know, all these months later, what you have finally decided? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Alton St. Pierre from SABC TV News. In the initial report released by the Reserve Bank, Judge Dennis Davis found that there could be no money recovered from ABSA because ABSA didn't benefit from the lifeboats per se. Why is it that ABSA should be held liable for money that was being used by shareholders or shareholders of Sanlam have benefited from? Shouldn't Sanlam come and explain as well? And in terms of the money that's being recovered, 1.1 billion was the money that was issued, that was the lifeboat. Should this not be adjusted to inflation or interest as well?
Good day, Public Protector. My name is Busisiwe Mkhwebane. I report for the Times newspaper. You mentioned in your opening remarks that contrary to popular belief that you were sitting on reports, you have been hard at work. But Sunday Times has reported that there are 4 reports that are outstanding that relate to the Gupta family that you haven't released. So if you could please update us on those reports and whether it's true that you are sitting on those reports. And my second question has to do with the involvement of the Special Investigating Unit with regards to your investigation into the conversion of panel vans into minibus taxis. We understand that you have brought in the SIU, but we are in the dark as to what exactly are you investigating. So if you could please enlighten us on the aspect of that investigation that you are looking at, the SIU has been asked to look at. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. I'm now going to give the opportunity to the Public Protector to give a response.
Thank you. Thank you, Theo. Karen, the CIEX report, which you say it was the recommendation of the former Public Protector, that was still an investigation. It was a draft, not even a report. It was supposed to be issued as a Section 7(9) to get the responses on the allegations which have been made. Therefore, on receiving the responses of all those who were implicated, ABSA, Reserve Bank, National Treasury, and the Presidency. Therefore, that's why the report has totally changed to what was originally leaked in the media. So, hence, now it took the different approach. And the amendment of the Constitution is based on the fact that the response was more of especially the response from Reserve Bank, as the lender of last resort, and also as we were taking into consideration the fact that we don't want a situation where the Reserve Bank is only benefiting, or it's only seen to be benefiting the commercial banks, whereas neglecting the needs of the South African citizens. And we were saying that I think the provisions of the Reserve Bank in the Constitution should be such that it will also make sure that they take into consideration the economic growth and the needs of the South African citizens. So it has nothing to do with being the issue of taking a certain side or being politically motivated, but it's purely on checking how can this report benefit the South African citizens going forward. The state of capture report, the last time we met, I said I'm taking a legal opinion or a legal advice on the matter. Yes, we will be opposing the judicial review application, but I think you'd know that we're still finalizing the process of collating all the evidence which is needed or which the President required, we avail in terms of Rule 53. And we were still finalizing the signature by various counsel on the confidentiality clause. So we are at that stage.
Can I just clarify, are you opposing the relief sought by the President, or are you opposing the appointment of a judicial review as recommended by...
I'm opposing the review by the President, including the Minister Zwane and Minister Van Rooyen's applications, because remember they've also applied for judicial review to set aside the whole report. And then SABC, the Dennis Davis report, we've taken into consideration the provisions of that report. We've also taken into consideration the provisions of the investigation which were done by former Judge Heath, the former head of Special Investigating Unit, and hence we're taking back the matter to SIU, especially because there was a proclamation which was issued on this particular matter for them to take the process forward to recover the amounts. And in the process of recovering the amounts, indeed, they will determine as well from their side the issues involved. But then this 1.125 billion, it relates to the interest, because the original amount of 1.5 billion was paid back by ABSA. So this relates to the interest which they've been accumulating over the years. Remember, they were given this lifeboat, and they were only repaying 1% interest, but then they were benefiting 15% out of the government bonds. Then SIPO, the 4 reports, the allegation by Sunday Times that we've been sitting on the Gupta-related matters. I must indicate that the reports which in fact, they are not even reports. There's one complaint we've received which was lodged during the Gupta landing, and that particular report was still under investigation. It was received in 2013, and what transpired is that in the very same 2013, the former Public Protector in August, it was raised by, in fact, it was a complaint lodged by the DA member, Mr. Mainir, and then the former Public Protector wrote to Mr. Mainir in August 2013 to say that she decided only to investigate the complaint lodged by Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, that she was not fairly treated during the JCPS cluster investigation, and that its failure to do so was in her detriment. So that report, the investigation was done, and there is a closing report which is being compiled by the office, and the memo, in fact, the said complainant is even retired, the one who complained, and they finally found that she is no longer implicated. But then I think the details we will give to the complainant and to the original complainant, Mr. Mainir. But in that particular aspect, he was informed that we will only be proceeding with the complaint lodged by Colonel Anderson. There's also a report on the social services complaint against the minister. That is at its final stage, because there was a Section 79 which was issued to the Minister Dlamini, and she was reminded. She never responded before I joined the Public Protector. So we've reminded her on that Section 79. Unfortunately, we haven't received any response. We are finalizing a report on that particular one. I think it relates to the procurement, irregular appointment of staff and service providers, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the awarding of a security services contract to Fuko Security Solutions and Cycle 7 by SASA. And then the other investigation relates to New Age, the tenders which were awarded by SABC, the complaints by Mr. Albert was received in 2014, that the allegation of maladministration and fruitless expenditure and wasteful expenditure by the SOEs funding the New Age TNA breakfast briefing sessions on the Morning Live program. The responses to this we've just recently received. Remember what was happening at the SABC, and then the board, the current board, has responded to our other investigational questions which we've sent to them. Therefore, we will be finalizing this report. It's one of the reports which we are almost at the final stages of finalizing. So we will be issuing the Section 79s to the implicated parties and then finalize it. So I think those are the only reports which we are having.
Thank you, Public Protector. I think there's an issue where Simpiwe said, why must Absa Bank be held liable? I'm not sure whether were you covered.
On that one, according to our investigation, that's what we determined. That ABSA, in fact, Bancorp was procured by ABSA, and we've gone through to ABSA to check all the documents relating to the taking over by ABSA from Bancorp. So, well, the report will detail all those issues to say why it's ABSA which is accountable on the matter.
The details on the SIU involvement in the panel van minibus.
Okay, hey Sipho, I thought I'd finished answering you because you asked a statement where I had to give you 3 reports. On that one, the panel vans, the aspect of the SIU conducted an investigation on the same matter. There is a proclamation which was published, but then their investigation was more of investigating the licensing stations, and it was not more on the panel vans, but they have some information which we need from them. So we are in the final stages of the report. We'll be issuing Section 79s, but then we wanted to rope them in to work with them on this particular aspect because they also have the specialized knowledge on identifying the converted panel vans, so which we do not have from our side, and as well the expertise on forensic investigations or the evidence they have on their part. So we will be handling those issues from with SIU, and they will be seconding some of their investigators to us. And we're also finalizing an MOU with them, especially to deal with future other investigations.
Thank you, Public Protector. Can I take the second batch of questions and the last one? I see a show of hands.
My name is Kelvin Olmo from ANN7. Just wanted to ask, a few weeks back, Mazwandile Mani from PPF, he had submitted papers in relation to the IFMS to your office. Just wanted to get an update or confirmation on the probe and the status of it. And also a few of the MPs, 5 MPs had come here with carrying signatures of 90 other MPs saying the state capture report PP must broaden that. So just wanted to get an idea on where is that report so far. Thank you so much.
I'm going to go. Hi, Fifi from CNBC Africa here. On the issue of the ABSA investigation, ma'am, are you not concerned that Bal Pottinger was behind putting ABSA back on the agenda?
My question is Koniso from Creative Koniso. My question is that, as you mentioned, that we've been in Mpumalanga and in Melo, and the former Prime Minister has been also in Caroline. The two problems that you have, what were the findings? Because what I know that the main problem is that the evictions of people who are living in the rural areas, and the impact of that is the functioning or operations of mines, as well as the water problem in Carolina. What have you found? Because there are different reports that we get between the government and as well as the community, because the community says that these problems of water as well as the evictions is not yet solved. But when you go to the government is briefing the public or the media that the problem of water as well as the eviction is okay. What were the findings, or we are still on the findings?
Thank you, Public Protector, for giving the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. On the issue of the National Treasury complaint by Mr. Mani, we've received that particular complaint. It's undergoing the assessment process, because when we receive a complaint, we'll have to determine whether we will investigate that particular matter. So we are at that stage, and I must indicate that I've also written to the Minister of Finance to find out whether he is investigating this matter any further after the media reports on this matter. And the MPs who've lodged the complaint, that matter is still under assessment as well. So the complaints were against National Treasury, South African Reserve Bank, FIC, FSB, and PIC. So we're still at the evidence collation stage. We have not moved anyway on that matter because it's still at assessment. On the issue of ABSA and Bell Potinga, behind the ABSA, this matter has been pending for, I think it's a 2012 matter. So there's nothing to do with that because we've received a complaint and we need to finalize this matter, which has been on the Public Protector backlog to be finalized. So the MLO, we will have to check the findings of what happened in Caroline, but then for the MLO one, we have inquired from the local municipality on the issues which relate to the service delivery, and then on the issues relating to the broader farm evictions issues, we will engage the Department of Rural Development, because remember, Public Protector doesn't have jurisdiction over farm owners, but then we will have to engage rural development on steps they've taken to resolve these particular issues. So for instance, now the issues of water still forms on part of the service delivery related issues, which we will investigate with the new complaints which we've received. But as I'm saying, the Carolina issues and stuff will have to go back to the complaints which we've received and check whether our Mpumalanga office has finalized those issues and at what stage are they in finalizing those issues.
Thank you very much. My name is Tsebo Ikane from the SABC. When you started with your statement, you deliberated about dispelling the myths that you've not been doing the work as expected, emanating from reports of the media. And I think attached to that is the continued utterances by your predecessor in the media about your role, the role of your office. How do you want to respond to this? Does this in any way put a lot of pressure on you in terms of trying to maybe do the work or be more person who's upfront with issues or reports in terms of delivering on your timelines, does that in any way give you any more pressure to come out with reports? Thanks.
Thanks, ma'am. Thank you for letting me have a second bite of the cherry. The National Transport Movement's just had a presser in which they are making claims that they've asked you to investigate corruption in PRASA, but you failed to do so. And they're now saying that you are captured by the Zuma regime, and that's why you're selective in the cases you investigate, avoiding investigations that have potential to embarrass the regime. This is a presser that's just happened. Could you please just give us a response to that, please, ma'am? Thank you so much.
Sure. Alderman Simpie again from the SABC. When you took office last year, there was an interview that the previous public protector, Thuli Madonsela, had with President Jacob Zuma. The audio of that investigation was then leaked to ENCA. Madonsela saying that it wasn't leaked, it was released. But yeah, it wasn't released to everyone, it was released to ENCA. You said that you will ask the police to investigate that matter. Was that matter investigated, and how far are you with regards to that?
Natasha from the Business Day newspaper. It's just a question of clarity. It seems to me, obviously we don't have the full CIEX report yet, so I'm just going on what we have in front of us. It seems that the findings and the recommendations are actually based on the contents of the CIEX report. Is that correct? Was the findings and your recommendations based on the contents of the CIEX report? Thank you.
For a follow-up question. Sorry, for a follow-up
Maybe.
question. Just a follow-up question that you say that you're going to meet the Department of Rural Development. I just want to know that, is it going to for the first time to meet them? Because when you're hearing the report from the public or from the community, they are saying that when they are going to the rural development, they are telling that they have to stay to the farm because the farm is for the farmer. They must listen to a farmer because let's say I can say in Zulu, they are saying,
Maybe before PP you can respond also, just to give clarification regarding the media reports that are there, which one are the good emails. PP will also give a commentary on that.
Thank you, Cleo. To clarify on the rural development matter, what I'm saying is we'll meet with rural development. Remember, when you conduct investigation, you receive the complaints, meet with rural development, and then get their response, what they have done on those complaints. But if you are saying, if they tell us that people must remain on those farms, I think we need to find a solution, because the Public Protector is there to remedy whatever the challenges people are facing or redress that. So I'm not privy to the details of the responses of Department of Rural Development, and if there are incidences where they told people to remain on farms even if they are treated like that. Because I know in terms of the legislation, which especially Esther, this legislation relating to them staying in the farms and when can they be removed, we'll have to also check what other means the department can be able to assist the public. But then we'll have to go deeper into that particular matter. Mr. Tsepo, the perceptions that, or the pressure, no, it's not a pressure, it's a question of serving South Africans. I'm here to serve. I'm here to make sure that cases which we have, as I indicated again to say, we have 4,000 plus backlog cases dating back to 2011, 2012. And it's so unfair to South Africans to have such cases, which we are trying to push and finalize, and people to know where they are met. In fact, they are faked, because there are people who have been accused as well. They need to know and move forward. So it's a question of doing our work and having a very capable team of investigators working hard to make sure that we serve South Africans. But yes, I'm under pressure because of the backlog which we are having, and unfortunately the capacity which we are having. We would want to do everything at once and on time. And when we receive new complaints and issues, we deal with them. National Transport Movement, the BRASA complaint, I don't know which one is that particular matter, unless it's still the one we are investigating. We have not yet issued a report. We've got several reports we've issued, in fact, which were issued in the past. I think there's this derailed one, the BRASA one, and if there's still a new matter against BRASA which we are investigating, we'll still have to issue the report as far as that is concerned, unless we decided not to investigate. But then, Karen, I can't comment more on that particular matter. And the capture by Zuma, I'm captured by the Constitution. I'm not captured by any person. Hence, I'm here to serve South Africans and not serve any political party or any person. The SABC audio leaked, in fact, the question from SABC, the investigation is ongoing. The case indeed was opened with the police. It's still under investigation. They are keeping me informed about the matter. The last time they said they've referred the matter to NPA for decision. Possibly there's still more guidance which they need on that matter. Business Day, CIEX is, the report is based on CIEX. No, it's not based on CIEX. We had to consider what the report was saying. Our key focus was investigating government. Why pay 600 billion to this company and you don't have any outcome out of it? So I think it was just giving a background, or is one of the evidence we had to look into. Thank you.
Thank you, PP. And I think you've answered all your questions comprehensively. I'd like to this briefing has come to an end. Colleagues, thank you for coming. Now you've had all the opportunity to answer all the questions, and I hope you'll be able to give the South Africans an objective view. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Quite a highly anticipated media briefing made by the Public Protector. She was releasing 4 reports today, all resulting from investigations pending when she took over. It was expected that she might release some reports into the Gupta emails, but that didn't happen. She was questioned about that in that question and answer session, and we'll certainly get more details from our reporter Aldrin Sampear, who was at that briefing. That's coming up in our news at 1. But just to take you briefly through those 4 reports involving what she called various government and provincial departments, the big one that she spoke about was the release of the CIEX report, which relates to the 1.1 billion rand lifeboat, the so-called lifeboat given by the Reserve Bank to Bancorp. Bancorp was later acquired by ABSA. So the Public Protector saying that she has referred that matter to the Special Investigating Unit to recover the misappropriated public funds unlawfully given to ABSA, and she further said that that investigation should be reopened to include various institutions. All right, so that in brief what came out of the Public Protector's release into various investigation reports. We'll get more on that, as I say, coming up with our reporter Aldrin Sampear in our news at 1. Stay with us. You're with the Midday Report. We'll take a short break. If there's time, we'll have a quick look at some of our top stories trending at this hour. Stay with us.